Hey everybody, today I'm going to show you how to create callout titles in After Effects. So let's get started. Today we're going to use motion tracking to be able to attach the titles to the action happening within the frame in the shot. So the first thing that we're going to do is going to create a new comp. Give it a name. Make sure that the size of your frame is correct. In this case, I'm doing a 1920 by 1080 comp for HD. If you're doing 4K or if you're doing something else, just make sure that you have the right size. I usually use square pixels, and the duration for it, 30 seconds should be okay. Actually, it's too long. Let's do like 15 seconds and hit OK. Now you're going to import, you're going to need the footage that you're going to use for the titles. In this case, I already have some stock footage that I downloaded from the internet. If you have your own footage, go ahead and import it. The way to import files into After Effects is to click on the project window and hit Command I, that's the shortcut, and then just browse through your computer or hard drives and find the footage that you want to select for your composition or for your project. There it is. Or if you don't like the shortcuts, you can use File, Import Files, or multiple files. All right. So next, we are going to drag our footage to the timeline. Here we have our footage of this lovely couple walking down the beach. And the goal today is to attach some titles to them and have them follow the action. So what I'm going to do, first of all, the video it was shot flat. So I'm gonna give it a little bit of a quick color grading. So if you go to Effects and Presets, and then you can go down to Color Correction, and then Curves. Go ahead and drag it. Then we're gonna give it a little bit of contrast, and that way the colors start to pop a little more on the footage. And then we're gonna do a little bit of saturation in the colors. Put a little bit of green, a little bit of blue, and a little bit of red. That's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad either. So without, this is with. So after we do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to name each character. So I'm going to use my name, my wife's name for this. So use the text tool and type the first name, Antonio. Double click on it. Make it a little smaller. You can choose whatever font you want, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just gonna use this. Now I'm going to draw a line that's gonna start right here, and then it's gonna come out all the way here, and that's where my name is going to be. So Antonio, make this a little smaller. Then to create the line, I'm going to create a shape layer. So you can zoom in into the screen if you select the viewer and then you click Command plus or Command minus. You can zoom in or out. And then you can move the screen around if you click the space bar and then you drag right or left or up and down or whatever it is that you need. So this is usually helpful to create graphics. So here we go, we're gonna create the first one. I'll go right here and right here. All right, we're gonna move it a little bit. And that looks pretty good. All right, if you zoom out, maybe we can move it up a little bit. There you go. Now we're gonna rename it. Line Antonio. Whoops. The way I renamed that, I just clicked on the layer, press return or enter, and that allows you to rename it. Once you're done, you press return again and you're good to go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to animate that so it looks a little better. So I'm going to open my shape layer, click on the add little tab right here, then go to trim paths and click right here, open trim paths, and here's where you can start animating your shape layers. So mine is gonna come from, it's gonna start at the end, it's gonna end up here. So here I'm gonna go down my timeline a little bit. You can adjust whatever you want this start later on. Actually, I'm gonna start it right here. I'll adjust later. So I'm gonna click on I'm gonna create a new keyframe, and then I'm going to move down a little bit, and I'm going to go to 100%. The first keyframe is a 0%, then the next one is 100, and then you can see how the line animates. So I'm going to make it look a little better. The way I like to do this is I like to play with the graph editor. So if you go here, click on your on end, that's the layer you're using, and then you click here, and then you can start adjusting the speed. So what I'm doing right now, I'm basically telling After Effects to start the animation of that line kind of slow and then get faster as it goes to the middle, and then kind of slows down as it goes to the end. So the way I kind of like to animate things like that is I like to make it so it starts fast right here. So it's going to start kind of fast, and then it's going to slow way down as it goes to the end. So now, if you look at it, so you can tell at the end that it's slowing down. The other thing that I like to do is I like to add some motion blur. So to be able to add motion blur to your layers, you have to click on this button. This enables the motion blur effect, but then you have to click and activate the motion blur on the layer that you want the motion blur applied to. So in this case, it's the Line Antonio layer, and that's off and that's on. So now, if I play it back and get a little bit of, let's stretch it out a little bit. If you play it back, get a little bit of motion blur, which is always kind of cool. All right, so I'm gonna change this. So now we have the line and we have the name. What I want to do is I want to track the motion inside the shot. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the tracker tab. I'm going to click on it. And then I'm going to click on the layer that on my footage that I want to track. Please make sure that your time indicator is at the very beginning of the timeline. Then you're going to hit track motion. And that's going to give you this track point. You can choose an area that can be easily tracked, or it looks kind of stands out, or it looks a little bit like a target. That way it makes it easier for the tracker to be more successful at tracking the point throughout the whole shot. So in this case, I'm going to use this guy's head. I'm just going to create a target here. Once I'm done with it, once I'm done setting my tracking point, I'm going to play analyze forward. And what's happening right now is After Effects is tracking the movements of our subject in the shot. As you can see, it's following this guy. My tracking point is following this guy's head. And that means that the tracking is being successful. So this might take a few seconds. All right, so now we have got our track ready. So if we go back to the very beginning and we zoom in, Command minus to zoom in and out. And you can tell that After Effects created a bunch of little keyframes. And that's the tracking, and it's following our subject perfectly. All right, cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to attach this information to a null object. We're gonna go to Layer, New, New null object, or just null object. So we're going to rename it tracking, that way we know. So now we're going to go back to our layer, our footage. We're going to go to Edit Target under our Tracker tab, and we're going to choose our null object. So I'm going to hit on Tracking, I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to go back to my composition view. And right now, nothing's happening, right? But what you have to do is you have to go back to your tracking view, or where you apply the effect, and then hit Apply. If you don't hit Apply, nothing's going to happen. So you hit Apply, apply dimensions X and Y. We want both. And hit OK. So now my null object is attached to this guy's head. If I scroll back and forth, you see that it's moving with it, with him, I mean. So that is great. So now we're going to attach our other layers, the name layer and the line, to the null object. So the way we're doing that is we're gonna go all the way back to the beginning of the shot, and we are going to, on the left side of the timeline where you have your the panel with your layers, you're gonna see this segment, this part right here where it says parent. So what you can do it in two different ways. You can select the layer here that you want your layer to be parented to, which in this case I want this layer to be parented to my null object, which is the tracking layer. So I'm going to hit tracking, and that means that whatever I do to the tracking layer, or the tracking layer does, this layer, the line Antonio layer, is gonna follow. So now if I scroll up and down the timeline, you see that the line, the animated line, is connected to the null object. So super easy and very cool. So if you play it back, see, it's kind of like bouncing with him and just moving along. It just looks attached to it. So that is awesome. You have two ways of doing this, of parenting layers. The first one is using this, just clicking on the layer and selecting the parent layer. In this case is layer number 3, which I named tracking, which is my null object. The other way of doing it is to using the pick whip tool, which is this right here. You click on it and you drag it to the layer and you just let go. And then automatically it's parenting my line Antonio layer to the tracking layer. So you can choose either way, whatever is easier, whatever you want to do works. So now we're going to do the same thing with the text layer. We're going to parent it, we're going to pick whip and drag it to the tracking layer. And now if you play this back, the name is attached to the guy, which looks really cool. Alright, so now we're going to do exactly the same thing for the second subject. So we're going to create, actually I'm going to duplicate my text layer, and I'm just going to move it to the other side, right about here. Then I'm going to use my text tool, double click on it, and replace my name with my wife's name. So what we're going to do now, we're going to track hair motion. So we're going to use the tracking tool again. So we're going to go back to our tracker tab, and we're going to track motion, and we're going to zoom in into our view, and we're going to drag our target to her hat. That seems to be an easy target for the tracker to track. We're going to go all the way back to the beginning of the timeline, and we're going to hit analyze forward. Alright, it's done. So now we go back and we double check, and we scroll, and we see that the track point is attached to her head. So we got a successful tracking. So now we are going to create a second null object. Exactly the same process. Go to layer, new, null object. We're going to rename it as tracking cat. Alright. Now I'm going to put it down here so we keep things organized. We have our second null object. Now we're going to go back to our footage. Make sure that the current track is tracker 2, because we have two trackers. The first one that we used to track the guy, and now the tracker number 2 that we're going to use to track the lady with him. So make sure tracker 2 is selected. You're going to hit edit target, and now we're going to choose tracking cat, which is the name of the second null object that I created. You're going to hit OK, and you're going to hit apply. Apply dimensions X and Y, OK. And now if you scroll this, you can see that the second you can actually change the color of the null object, which is very useful. That way you can tell the difference. You can see that my second null object, the green one, it's attached to that young lady in the shot. Now, same process again, one more time. We're going to click on the layer of her name. We're gonna pick whip and let go over tracking cat. So now her name is parented to the null object. Okay, so now we're going to create a line like the one I have for my name. I'm gonna create a line for her name. So go all the way back to the beginning, and we're gonna use the pen tool to create a shape layer again. We're gonna make it start right here. We're gonna come here, and then it's going to end up right here. We're gonna adjust it a little bit. Perfect. So there it is. It's looking good, but it's not animated nor attached to the null object. So we're gonna fix that right now. Then rename that layer cat's line. We're going to add trim paths, and then we're going to go all the way to the beginning of the timeline. The end, we're gonna go all the way down to 0. We're gonna click on the stopwatch to create one keyframe. Go move forward a few frames. Go all the way to 100. And now we're going to play with the graph editor to make it look a little better. Just make sure that end is clicked or selected. So now you go here, the same thing. We're gonna make it start a little quick and then make it slow down as it gets to the end of the animation. So we go back, let's add a little bit of motion blur, and there it is. Cool. Now we're gonna parent this layer to the null object, and parent tracking cat, and now it's attached to the name and the young lady on the beach. What I would do right now, we're pretty much done with what we wanted to accomplish, but you know, we want to have a couple of you know, we want the names to kind of like maybe fading or something. Okay, you can animate them in different ways, but maybe we can start with both lines, watch a couple, you know, maybe a few frames of just the footage, then the lines come up, maybe offset them a little bit, so one starts first, then the other one. There you go, that looks a little better. And then we're going to fade the names in, and we're gonna lower the opacity to 0. Oops, 0 right here. Move a few frames forward and 100, and this will look kind of like that. There you go. Maybe a little less, a little faster. Move it back a little bit, right about there. Okay, cool. We're gonna do exactly the same with the other name, and start about here. Click on the stopwatch to create a keyframe, all the way down to 0, move forward a few frames, and move all the way back to 100, and that's it. So if you go all the way back to the beginning, cool. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let me know if you want to see some other After Effects, Adobe Premiere, Photoshop tutorials, and comment below. If you want to subscribe, that would be awesome. I appreciate your time, and hopefully you learned something useful today. Thank you.